Hey everyone, let's carry on with the tutorial on Photoshop that's specific to Art 231. Today I want to cover what? I want to just the general document size, talk a little bit about layers, talk a little bit about the major tools, and then quickly how to save things. So we'll run through this fairly quickly. You can go back and watch this video over and over. It's really for reference, and we will be covering most of this stuff in class, but this is just to make you a little more comfortable. Something you'll notice in some of the wider camera shots, I don't have the same setup as you do for doing these videos. I do use the same Wacom Cintiq and the same Dell computer that you have as your RDC workstation. But I use the Mac, and I actually use a 24-inch XP Pen tablet for my own use in my home. And this is how I have the screencast set up. Um, that's why. Photoshop is not different enough from Windows to the Mac OS that you need to worry. Uh, um, Storyboarder isn't as well. That's the other software that we'll use. So anyways, that's why I use a Mac. Don't sweat it. So something you will notice here, it's a little different than the last time we chatted, is I've set up the workstation just a little bit different, just so I only need to record the one screen. So uh, it looks like it did last time, except for um, I pulled the layers palette over here. That's just important to talk about. So I've got a file open here, and typically what's going to happen is you're going to open a template that I've provided. They'll be very rare where you'll need to create a document from scratch. If you do, I'll let you know exactly what that needs to look like. So let's just go and look at the size of this image, because we are going to use a standard size. So under the image menu, go to image size, and you'll see it show up here. This is important. So this is our typical pixel width and resolution that we'll use in this class. It's relatively low resolution, and that's intentional. We don't need massive file sizes to do the work that we're going to do. Again, this is like pre-production style work, so you don't need massive files or high degrees of finish. Makes it easier to share files, and it also is going to prevent you from zooming in and using a little tiny 1 pixel brush to put in these tiny little details that aren't going to matter for this course. And so we use the basic like 16:9 aspect ratio, like a HD aspect ratio. So that equals 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels at 72 pixels per inch, and that just works well on the screen and with your Cintiq and everything. The other reason we use that kind of standard resolution and size is that works well with the other classes that you'll do when you start doing stuff in Maya, Substance Painter, ZBrush, Spine, all of those software programs that you'll eventually use. Uh, this format works. Now, when you get out into industry, the format and the aspect ratio that you're working on, that really depends on the project. Obviously, things that are made for TV or things that are made for film can be different. If it's a web series, that's different. Video games are different. So, but for the purpose of the class, we will use 1920 by 1080 by 72. All right. Let me just quickly look at the layers. And again, I'm speaking to you as if you're not terribly familiar with Photoshop or programs like it. If you are familiar, just keep one ear open. You might learn something that you don't know. Photoshop is built around layers, so we can have different things happening in different layers, so we can work on one spot without impacting the other. We can put down a background, we can put a character over top of it, and we can adjust those two layers independently. You can turn things on and off, so I've just got a landscape photo there that I'm turning on and off. You'll notice that I have everything labeled. Okay, nothing just says layer 1 or layer 1 copy or layer 1 copy draft version 2. Okay, other than the background, everything has a layer. I want you to get into that habit right away. That's the easiest way to keep track of things. You're not clicking through 8 different numbered layers trying to find the one that you want. Okay, with me so far? Um, so again, you can rearrange layers if I want that landscape photo on top of the demo layer. I can do that. Again, turning things on or off. Can right click and there's a bunch of things that you can do. You can merge with the layer below, you can flatten them all out, you can delete. Um, don't worry too much about that for now. Just know that we typically work on layers. So I'm going to work on the demo layer. Oh, something I should have mentioned earlier. Check out the keyboard shortcuts link that I posted on Blackboard. You'll want to get uh, you'll want to get used to using those, particularly Control Z, Control Z. That makes undo, right? Forget what I just did, undo it. That's an important one. So let me just grab a kind of regular brush here, and just gonna make a couple splotches just to be ugly. Don't worry about what I'm doing here. Okay, so let's just go through some of the tools quickly. So I'll use my mouse to kind of cursor over these, uh, but I want you to get used to using the keyboard shortcut. So you'll notice that uh, when the tool pops up, it tells you what the keyboard shortcut is. So move is V. Click on that, and if I click on that layer I just drew, then I can just move that around. Just like it says, you can nudge it with the arrow keys a little bit. Every tool you'll notice has some subtools in it, and then just spend some time clicking around so you get familiar with that. Next is the marquee tool. There's some different shapes you can see. Again, that just draws that out if you just want to select that. Uh, Polygon lasso. This is important. The lasso tool. Um, so if you use that kind of free form one, then you can draw a specific shape, or I could just highlight one part of that. And if I choose a different color here for my brush, because only part of that is selected, it'll only let me draw on that part of the image. And there's some straight edge ones, kind of a free form. Crop, obviously, that's important, but typically the template I give you will be cropped to size already. What's next? The eyedropper. So I for eyedropper. That is a great way to sample color. So let me pull up this landscape photo. Let me hide the demo layer. So let's say I wanted to reproduce a painting, and I want to use this palette. So I can use the eyedropper, and just by clicking on it, it samples the color, and now you can see the foreground color has changed. So if I go back to that demo layer, in fact, let me do this. I'm going to add a new layer down with this little plus sign, and I'll just call that colors. So now if I switch back to the brush by pushing B, right, I can just make this splotch, and it's sitting on its own layer. Then I'll go back to the eyedropper tool, and maybe I want some of that green. Okay, and I'll just put that back there, and then one more. Okay, you could do this for as many colors as you wanted to. Now these are sitting on their own layer, so when I get to my painting, I can just switch back from the eyedropper. Okay, I want some blue and paint that in, then I want that green, then I want that darker green. That's what the eyedropper is for. It just selects a color range, so you want to get used to that. The brush, and typically just the you know, the regular brush tool, and we'll get into different brushes a little bit later. You'll notice up here, every time you select a tool, different properties open up. So when we're on the brush, we have the opacity and the flow. So if we're at full opacity versus, you know, crack that down. It's the same color, it's just at a different opacity. Okay, with me so far? Next is the eraser tool. Obviously that's important. Something else I want you to look at is the zoom tool. That is for zooming in and out, and if you right click, there's some options, and there's some options up here. So that's how you can zoom in and out. You can also scroll side to side, like left click and scroll side to side to zoom in and out. It can be a little bit clunky. Okay, so that's essentially the tools that you'll need to know. So the move tool, the marquee tool, the lasso tool, the eyedropper, the brush, the eraser, the zoom tool, and then pay attention to the foreground and background colors. Pay attention to your layers. So let's quickly talk about saving. Oh, let me just jump back. Remember that every time you select a tool, there's different properties that you can adjust. So you can really fine tune the tools and the brushes. So let's say I'm happy with my masterpiece here, and I want to save it. Typically what I'll ask you to do is save it as a PNG file, and I'll be very specific about what the file format that I want. So every assignment says what type of file I want. But let's say I didn't want that demo layer. I want to get rid of those. And I also don't want the color palette, and I don't want those guides to show. So I don't have to get rid of those layers. I just need to hide them. And then when I go under File, and obviously you'd be saving your work as you're going, save it as the Photoshop file. But for the final save, I want to do Save As. Okay, and here I'll select PNG. I'll just save it to my desktop. You have to figure out where and how you want to save your files. Okay, and you need to keep organized because you need to find them and you need to submit the correct file. Okay, so I'm just calling that the value thumbnails template PNG. Going to click Save, and you'll see another little dialog box. Always click the large file size for OK. All right, so we didn't change the actual Photoshop file. You can see it's still the Photoshop file up here. This is the file name. Right, all those layers still work. But if I open that PNG from the desktop, you can see it had those layers hidden. Okay, make sure you name the file correctly as per the instructions. One thing that drives studios crazy is misnamed files, because that can screw up the whole pipeline. If you don't call your little piece correctly, then the next person won't recognize it, or the next piece of software won't know where to look for it. Okay, so that was kind of a whirlwind, but hopefully between that last video and today, you'll feel good about a little more comfortable with Photoshop and how we're going to use it in Art 231. Thanks, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.